Whoa, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the MrWarrenHayes Show. I, of course, am Warren, and I will be your host here for the next while, talking about professional wrestling right here on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes or on your favorite podcast application, wherever it is that you're listening to me. Thank you very much. And that's a sound that came out of me that really doesn't happen all that often. That was took me by surprise, as you can tell. Thank you very much for being here. Leave a like on the video if you're listening to it, or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify. All to just help grow the podcast, get it into more people's feeds and whatnot. I'd appreciate it a great deal if you did help out. So we are going to be going through quite a lot of little topics tonight, but nothing like tremendously big and over encompassing. Like last week, we had a nice beefy episode. This week, we've trimmed things down. It's a lot leaner. So maybe breaking with my habit of having like a few topics that I really, dive into and pick apart. Well, now we've got more a series of smaller, punchier little topics. So all sorts of new stuff, contract stuff. It's contract season. We're talking about WWE's creative shakeups and the lawsuit, their lawsuit that the newest lawsuit, I should say. So see, you're gonna find out all about it if you stick around. You're already here. Why don't you? Thank you very much for listening. Let's just get right to it. It would appear that WWE is in legal hot water again. This time, accused of deceptive marketing, along with ESPN, in regards to their presence on ESPN. We're going to read this article off the Wrestling Observer Figure 4 online. Josh Nason is going to be the guy, our pal, chum buddy. I got to say, just before we go on, the Observer has become so obnoxious with the ads. Now, I have said it before and I'll say it again. I understand why they do this. Okay? I get it. I understand why they do it, because this is really like the only way to get paid and running a website. You need the ads. I understand. But it is really fucking obnoxious. It doesn't take away the fact they get paid, but in the meantime, it's really obnoxious. The rollout of WWE premium live events on ESPN's straight-to-consumer streaming platform this past September was not without its critics. A rollout that has now brought about a class action lawsuit. First reported by Post Wrestling and Brandon Thurston on Friday, the lawsuit filed Thursday in Connecticut's U.S. District Court accuses WWE of being deceptive in their marketing of the new union when claiming all ESPN subscribers would have access to WWE PLEs without an additional fee. Only WWE is named in the lawsuit and not ESPN. The reason, Thurston surmised, was that, quote, by only suing WWE, the plaintiffs are trying to avoid the arbitration and class action waiver provisions that they note are in Disney's subscriber agreement. ESPN/Disney has previously stated that they expect to eventually sign deals with all cable streaming adjacent providers that carry ESPN, which would give subscribers access to their new streaming platform at no additional cost. TKO head Mark Shapiro has also stated that is their expectation as well. I can read. As of this writing, that is not the case with several major providers, meaning those subscribers must pay $30 a month for access to the ESPN streaming platform and the WWE PLEs. The plaintiffs are looking to represent any US-based customer who, A, were existing ESPN customers between August 6th, prior to September 20th WrestlePalooza, and B, paid for ESPN's new service in that time frame. Those who are subscribers of DirecTV, Fubo TV, Hulu, Hulu Plus TV, Spectrum, and Verizon FiOS, I don't know how to pronounce that, are ineligible for the lawsuit due to their ability to both authenticate and get access in that time frame. The lawsuit brought about by two consumers claims more than $5 million are at stake, with eligible consumers getting a cut if they win the case. In the suit, it was estimated that WWE content drove roughly 95 to 125,000 signups during the proposed class period. Don't worry, we're going to talk about all of this. The next step is for WWE to respond legally. Thank you for the rundown there, Josh. So, show of hands. Anyone who is surprised by this, raise your hands. This was bound to happen. This was 100% bound to happen because we covered this extensively here on the stream, on the podcast. This was covered substantially. The coverage, not the coverage, but the communications that were used to convey what was going on, like what you needed to do as an ESPN, what you had to do with ESPN if you wanted to see WWE was extremely unclear. The language was extremely unclear. Their press release, when they announced the deal, never ever mentioned that it had it wouldn't be available to all cable distributors, I guess, is what you'd call them, right? It wouldn't be available to all of these providers, cable providers. That's the word I was looking for. It wouldn't be available to all of them. This is something we found out later when people started digging around and then started asking, the principals in charge when they'd show up in interviews. And it's like, well, we heard that, Cox users would not have access to them. No, that is indeed the case. We're trying to finalize a deal and so on and so forth. And you're like, this is nuts. Because they never properly communicated that. And then on top of that, it was extremely confusing when it was time to sign up, which level of subscription you needed to get access to WWE on ESPN. It wasn't just like it wasn't just like hopping in and subscribing and that's it, you're done. No, you had tiers. You've got tiers. And you had to have a proper tier for that to happen. So it was a mess. And anyone who says it's not a mess is wrong or is working for WWE, right? Is part of the legal team. This is it was a fucking mess. And it was only a question of time before someone decided to pull a class action lawsuit like just happened today. Or on Friday anyway, or at least when we found out on Friday. If it's $5 million that is at stake right now, I got to tell you, and I think I think most of you would agree with me. $5,000 ain't it ain't that big a deal for WWE. $5 million for WWE. Not that big a deal, it's not something that's going to break the bank for them. No one's going to get like super duper upset. It's not going to be the end of World Wrestling Entertainment. It's it's going to be more like, oh well, all right, there you go. That's the payday you get today. That's the payday you get, and WWE will 100% settle this out of court. Like there's no way this is actually going to court, right? Because there's no way that they can say, oh yes, we were 100% honest in this. That we were, honest is the wrong word, transparent. There's no way they can say that, yes, everything was clear from the get-go, because it was not. It really was once everyone started digging. Now, the thing that's really interesting that comes out of this, that raised my eyebrow, and I hope it did to you as well, is the statement in the lawsuit that says, quote, WWE content drove roughly 95 to 125,000 signups during the proposed class period. So during the period, let's not forget, between August 6th and September 20, right? August 6th, which was, I guess, the announcement, and September 20, which was WrestlePalooza, WWE signed up 95, or WWE content drove roughly 95 to 125,000 signups. I would love to know where they got this data. I would love to know where the plaintiffs were able to dig up this number. Because if this is anything close to accurate, and I wouldn't, like, why wouldn't it be? Because why would you lie when filing court papers? Wouldn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. So, but we're gonna just wear our skeptical hats here for a little bit. If WWE drove 95 to 125K subscribers, new subscribers, signups, as they say here, to ESPN in that period, that's not a lot. That has got to be underwhelming and disappointing. One of the reasons that a lot of us had sort of come to grips with as to why an ESPN would pay so much bonkers amounts of money to secure WWE content for ESPN was to generate new subscriptions on the launch of this new of the new ESPN service, right? The ESPN service has to generate lots of signups from the get-go so that so that it will be successful, so that when you sort of turn the numbers over to the shareholders, they're like, oh, these are excellent numbers. What a success. We are so glad that we invested in this, right? That we're giving you our money so that you can do stuff like this. What a great return on investment. That's what they need to see. Now, ESPN, regardless of WWE, right? I don't think has ever touted the number of subscribers that they've acquired, or the growth, or like the explosive first few days where it's like, we got like 62 trillion people to sign up, like nothing like that. They've been very quiet about it. And I've continued to say that WWE, ESPN has been very, very quiet in regards to how WWE PLEs are performing. Again, if this was something that was generating a lot of views, a lot of interest, a lot of subscribers coming in, they'd be screaming at the top of their lungs. They'd be heralding that at the top of every hillside. Hilltop? At the top of every hilltop? Mountaintop, even? The point being is that they're not saying anything. If we turn around here and we say, look, WWE content drove 95 to 125K signups for the proposed period. So between the announcement and WrestlePalooza, folks, if this is the case, this has performed on par or worse than AEW pay-per-view numbers, like the worst performing AEW pay-per-view numbers. That means, again, that it's probably not a lot of people who signed up. Probably not a lot of people who were interested enough to get in on the ground floor. And one could assume that as it stands right now, ESPN is not excited with the results. How could anyone be excited with the max being 125,000 subscribers? Who could be excited about that? And again, like, we don't know where these numbers are coming from. We don't know what the source is. But I would have a tendency to think that, again, if you're filing legal papers to come after a company, I would assume that the facts that you're delivering are correct, that you did get this information from firsthand trustworthy sources. I'm assuming right now. This might come back to bite me in the ass when WWE, files its response and says, these people are completely these people are completely nuts, and whatnot. It's a very, very interesting it's a very interesting little statistic there that we're adding in here. Because we don't know what kind of, how they're performing and whatnot, how far, how big of a driver WWE is. And, it's our first look at it. And if it is indeed the case, well, WWE is severely underperforming, I would say. I can't imagine ESPN being happy with the amount of money that they're paying these people annually. Now, WrestleMania's coming up, Royal Rumble, for all intents and purposes, the biggest time of year for WWE is about to happen, right? Like from Royal Rumble right into April. This is the biggest time of year for WWE. So maybe this is what ESPN is counting on, is banking on. Maybe this is what WWE is banking on. It's like, no. Like, it's WrestlePalooza. Who gives a shit? WrestleMania's coming up. That's where the big numbers are going to hit. And maybe. But again, we'll see. We'll see what it translates to. Right? Because the other thing you have to remember is, the other thing you have to keep in mind is churn. So how many people are going to subscribe, let's say, to watch WrestleMania, and they'll subscribe for a month, and then they'll hit the bricks. Like they'll subscribe and immediately cancel instead of sticking around to watch, Payback or whatever it is after. Roadblock. WrestleMania Backlash. Whatever the pay-per-view is after. Or Money in the Bank. And then a 2-night SummerSlam. Are they doing 2 nights for SummerSlam this year? Who cares? I don't care. So, it's like they might get like these huge numbers, but if the people aren't sticking around, Great Balls of Fire, exactly. If no one's sticking around, if no one is staying subscribed, I can't imagine ESPN going, this is tremendous. So listen, interesting number, interesting data here that was provided in the suit. We'll see how this all turns out. I'm fairly confident that this is going to wrap up with a what's the word I'm looking for, with a settlement out of court. I'm fairly confident about that. Let's do some contract talk. Let's start with New Japan Pro Wrestling. A New Japan Pro Wrestler announces he has resigned with the company. Oh boy, who could it be? Yeah, exactly. Who could it be? Who could be the professional wrestler who has re-signed with New Japan Pro Wrestling? Oh, it's Shota Umino. The 28-year-old revealed on social media on Friday he has re-signed with the company for 2026. Writing this, I have signed a contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling Co. Limited. It's awesome. He's such a geek. For the 2026 fiscal year, my beloved family is New Japan Pro Wrestling alone. Umino is coming off of a difficult 2025. You don't say. He started the year by losing to Zack Sabre Jr. in an IWGP World Heavyweight title match in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom 20. That was a struggle. In March, he lost to David Finlay in the finals of the New Japan Cup, and in the following month, dropped an IWGP World title match to Hiroki Goto at Windy City Riot in Chicago. He finished second in the B block during the G1 climax, but was eliminated in the first knockout round by Yota Tsuji. And Umino is the son of referee Red Shoes Hiroyuki Umino and started in the company's dojo system in 2017. Blah, 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 blah. There he is. There's the boy. There's the golden boy right there. Shota Umino. He's sticking around. I mean, there's no real surprise there, right? There's no real shock. And the interesting thing is that the interesting thing overall is that Shota, he's basically signed for a year, right? I had heard that a lot of New Japan contracts were all being pared down to year after year, and to 1 year after 1 year, and there's some guys lower on the card who have, I guess, what, worse contracts. Not necessarily worse, but that aren't signed for an official years. But then again, there were guys in the company that had multi-year contracts, but most of the guys who had multi-year contracts are gone. So what you've got instead is Shota Umino touting that I've got an extra year. And I mean, good for him, but that just, to me, it shows that he's still not perceived as a top guy, but has the perception of, nonetheless, we're going to lock him down for a year. We're going to give him a full year, a full-time contract for 1 year. So you can see that nonetheless, he's still very interesting, or interesting in the eyes of the New Japan booking committee. So that's something. Good for him. I mean, I think he's one of these Japanese wrestlers who wants to come work in the US. Basically just like ditching Japan, coming to work in the US. I think that's what he wants. I'm just talking out of it's just a gut feeling. I don't know if that's exactly the case, but he likes coming to the US. He enjoys being in the United States. He's friends with a lot of the gaijin. He's friends with Will. I don't know how his relationship is with Mox anymore. I couldn't tell you. You'd assume that there's still good feelings, but there you go. So that's one contract tidbit out of the way. There is a report going around that Killer Kelly is reportedly gone from TNA. Fightful Select reported on Saturday that Kelly's contract with the company expired in December and as a result has left the company. They additionally said that there weren't any creative plans for her currently. Kelly's contract has been extended after taking maternity leave in 2024, making her return at Against All Odds last June. Her last match took place during TNA's recent television tapings in El Paso, where she lost to the likes of Myla Grace and the E-Inspiration. Since making her return, she has been teaming with Rosemary. The timing of Kelly's departure comes as a number of other contracts in the company are either coming up or have been expired. Jake Something recently left the company to join AEW, where he became the newest member of the Don Callis family. Joe Hendry, who had already been making frequent appearances on NXT, left TNA towards the end of 2025 to sign with WWE. Joining TNA in 2020, Kelly won the TNA Knockouts tag team titles twice with Masha Slamovich during her time in the company. So, I mean, there you go. So there's another contract that hasn't been renewed, another freelancer who's out there. I don't know if I would hire Killer Kelly back, but let's say, because this is what we always default to. Tony Khan, AEW. If I were Tony Khan, at the very least, I'd kick the tires on her. At the very least, in Ring of Honor, right? You have her come in, you have her work a little bit, you see how it goes, see how everything meshes. And if she's not to your liking, you just send her home. And if you like her a little bit more, well, then you have her show up a little bit more. So, it's like, sometimes it all depends on the environment, depends on what you're doing, so on and so forth. But, we'll have to see how all this goes with her moving forward. But, I don't know. At the very least, I'd just kick the tires on her. Just give her a look. I'm definitely not saying, oh, you have to hire her immediately. Not really. She's been in a tag team for a while. Just see how she can hang in a singles environment. And I'm not saying, bring her in, push her, make her a star. We've had this discussion recently. Sometimes you just have to hire people. You need competent bodies in there to do solid mid-card work to get the stars over. And that's an important role to play in a promotion nonetheless. So we'll see where she falls very soon. Maki Ito has signed with Stardom. And it's funny here, like, you know, come on. Stardom announces signing a former AEW TJPW wrestler. Maki Ito, wasn't she? She was in AEW one time. She was like in a one-time appearance thing, right? She showed up once, and that was it. Like, what are we doing here? If anything, substitute AEW by GCW. She is much more identified with Game Changer Wrestling than All Elite Wrestling. What the fuck are we doing here? Oh, she did twice? She did twice? I remember that I distinctly remember the one time she showed up. I remember the debut, I guess, since she's been there more. Look, let me pull out Cage Match and maybe my memory will be refreshed. Since chat is telling me, Warren, you're fucking wrong again. That's not what they're saying. That's what they mean. Oh, yeah, look at that. 2021. Oh, shit. Okay. No, she's okay. Okay. Now I remember. She was in the World Championship Eliminator Tournament. I remember this now with the Japanese brackets and whatnot. Okay, all right. Okay, I correct myself. I had forgotten about it. See, that's something I completely stored away deep in my brain somewhere. Well, we don't need this anymore. Thank you for keeping me honest, chat. Yeah, I appreciate it. So, where were we? Oh yeah, okay. Well, let's read the thing. At Stardom's show at Corkin Hall on Saturday, Ito was revealed as the mystery woman behind a series of vignettes that had been airing. Stardom president Taro Okada announced the signing and presented Ito with an official Stardom tracksuit to commemorate her becoming a full-time member of the roster. Okada said on today's show, "Today, Stardom has signed a contract with pro wrestler Maki Ito." That's what he said. Ito said as well, Maki Ito said this, "After 9 years of professional wrestling, this is the first time I'll be doing it as part of this organization. I will be joining Stardom. Nice to meet you." Ito's debut match with the promotion will take place on tomorrow's show, also at Corkin Hall. She will team with Sari Ano against Aya Sakura and Sayaka Kurara on the show. Then Ito, of course, left New Tokyo Joshi Pro in August 2025 after being with the promotion since 2016. Outside of Japan, Ito made several appearances with AEW from 2021 to 2023, with her last match having been on the June 14, 2023 show in Washington. She also regularly performs for GCW, with her last match for the promotion having been on the November 22nd Dream On pay-per-view from New Jersey. That's definitely someone to add to your roster. Look, apparently it's going over big in Japan. She is selling she already has her t-shirt out. She's selling a good amount of merchandise. Good for her. I'm not a Maki Ito guy. I used to be, because I think that for a while there was something dynamic about her, and her act was very unique. It was very fresh, you know. And I think there was a lot of appeal to it. She's very naturally charismatic and whatnot. Like, it was very, very interesting. But I also think she's very, 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 very overrated. I don't think she's half as good as people say she is. Look, I'll be honest. If Maki Ito ends up in world title programs in Stardom, I might grit my teeth at that. I'm like, no, we're straying from the vision here. Unless suddenly by joining, if suddenly by joining Stardom, she becomes like this irrepressible goddess, right, of pro wrestling, where she's just like, whoa, you know, and suddenly she's working like Tom Nakano, you know, she's the next Mayu Iwatani out of nowhere. And you're like, okay, but probably not. I think Ito is a what you see is what you get type of situation, and she's going to rely a lot on shtick and whatnot. And I understand that there's an audience for that. And does this mean that, you know, is this something that Stardom sort of wants to circle around a little more towards? Like, I didn't see the Corrigan Hall show. I didn't see her wrestle. Now she's going to wrestle at the next big Stardom show, and I can't remember against who. Someone in the chat will probably tell me, or I can actually just check that out here. I think I have this information right at my fingertips. My fingertips are very long, I guess, because it's taking me a while. No, I do not have that information at my fingertips. Against Aya Sakura. So that's good. You know, I mean, oh yeah, and there's a stipulation, right? Like if Maki loses to Sakura, she can't call herself the cutest in the world anymore, right? Something like that. I'm like, whatever. I mean, look, I am all for. Here's the thing, she had grown stale in TJPW. She had built a name and a reputation for her. I think it is just the logical next step for her to leave, go try out something else. Look, Stardom wants to sign her. Go ahead and do it. I think that's good for her. I think it's good for the business. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I see the act. It's the same act she's been doing for 9 years. She said, 9 years has been in the business. She's been doing this for 9 years. 9 years in the business, 9 years doing the same act. If she's doing the exact same thing in Stardom, I'm going to get bored really, really quickly. Unless, like I said, suddenly she unlocks, you know, an entirely new move set, and suddenly she's this work rate phenom that she never chose to exhibit before. But if all she does is go around and cry in the ring and, you know, do all that bullshit still, I'm not into it. I'm sorry to say. Maki Ito is extremely overrated by wrestling fans. She's very, 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 very overrated. So again, like I think both things are true. I'm happy for her, and it's good for the business, and it's good for her that she's able to move around like that. That's one. But Stardom is a promotion I actually watch. You know, it's a promotion I watch. So, you know, I was fine not watching Maki Ito. I never felt the need to chase down Maki Ito matches. I was completely okay with that. Now she's back in my sights, and I guess I'm gonna have to watch her now. I'll keep an open mind. I will keep an open mind. I'm not gonna bury her just because she pops up on TV. But if I'm gonna bury her if she stinks, I mean, she'll never be as bad as the Mickie James match from WrestleCon from the Mark Hitchcock show. She's never going to stink as bad as that. I'd hope. And then, oh boy, hey. There's a New Japan wrestler that's drawing a lot of interest in the United States. What? There's a new, who could that be? I mean, is it Yota Tsuji? Could it be Kosei Fujita? Like, are we going out of left field? Who could this wrestler be from New Japan who could be drawing a lot of interest in the United States? Oh, it's Gabe Kidd. Gabe Kidd has options if he is to hit the free agency market soon. Dave Meltzer noted on Wrestling Observer Radio that there is, quote, a lot of interest in the United States, unquote, regarding Kidd. He also mentioned that it's likely Kidd's New Japan deal expires at the end of the month. For those of you who don't know, most New Japan contracts expire at some point in January, at the start of February. Most of them do. So, you know when the scoops start appearing in December, you know, when they start popping up in December, and they start talking about such and such wrestler, contract is coming up and all that. That's because it's the annual thing. Like, there's no real surprise. No one is shocked. Or at least if you follow New Japan Pro Wrestling, nothing is shocking in that regard. The only question is, will New Japan make a bid to hang on to Gabe Kidd? Or will someone else? Anyway, here's the quote. Gabe Kidd is another one that they, WWE, want. I'm sure AEW wants. I'm sure New Japan wants. I've been hearing a lot about them because Gabe Kidd's contract probably is up at the end of the month. I don't know that 100% because most New Japan contracts are. Exactly what I was saying, just confirmed by Dave Meltzer. With Kidd, it's going to be real interesting with him because I think he really loves New Japan and New Japan made him a star. Yes. But I also think that he's, I think he's also, what's the word I'm looking for? I think he's also a little discouraged with his 2025. I think there's stuff that he expected 2025 to happen in 2025, that didn't. Things didn't materialize like they should have. You can put a lot of blame on a lot of things as to why it didn't happen. WWE is also said to have interest in AEW's powerhouse Hobbs. In this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter, Meltzer wrote that WWE was very high on the ops member. However, it's not clear when Hobbs' AEW contract expires. Meltzer and Garrett Gonzalez also addressed the situation with Hobbs on Observer Radio. There's more to the Hobbs thing than I wrote, Meltzer said. Responding to a question about when Hobbs' AEW contract expires, Meltzer said, I don't know, but I know that those in WWE really want him. I know there's a lot of people who are shocked by this, but I understand why Dave does these reports, but then, I sort of look at this and I shrug and I go, well, of course. A guy like Hobbs, if you're a wrestling promoter and you see a guy like Hobbs, you're like, hell yeah, of course I am interested in this guy. That I am very high on bringing this guy in. I would love him to work some dates for me. Of course. What are we talking about? Of course, WWE is, in fact, the opposite would shock me. Any wrestling promotion for that fact, for any promotion, I'd be like, any promotion that would say, no, we're not really interested in Willie Hobbs. And I'm like, okay, why? If anything, it's reassuring. WWE should be into this guy. And it's not just a question because of because WWE handles the book big men better, like the chat is pointing out. I don't think that's even the case. I don't even think it's the case that WWE books big men better now. I don't think they've been booking big men well for a while. Otherwise, Omos would be a megastar. Braun Strowman would have been a megastar. I don't think that's the case anymore. Keith Lee would not have floundered fucking around wondering what the hell is going on. I don't think the thing where I think there was a time that it absolutely used to be true, that it 100% used to be true, where you're a big muscular dude, you'd go to WWE and that's the land of the big men and they knew how to handle you. That, I think, for the longest time, it was absolutely the truth. And I think it was so ingrained in the identity of WWE that we still believe that today. But objectively, when you look at the landscape, you look at the past world champions of the past, let's say, 7 to 8 years, which is when I started observing, it's not necessarily big guys anymore. If you look back, there's no big guys, like big men, like Hobbs guys or Omos guys or, really big, huge dudes. I mean, Roman Reigns is not a small individual, don't get me wrong, but I don't think anyone says, oh, that's a big guy. He's not a big guy pro wrestler. You know what I mean? He's not a bodybuilder. He's not a big guy wrestler. You know, and then when it comes to AEW, Tony Khan doesn't seem to know how to book big men. I think this is like his fatal flaw. He knows how to book anyone around, you know, 250 and lighter. I think he's completely fine with that. But when it comes to the really big muscular types, or the just, you know, the physically imposing dudes, I don't think he knows how to book them. And he may just not be interested. He just might not be interested. So it's a two-sided thing. Now they're going to do well with Obafemi because, you know, I think Obafemi has that type of charisma, and he has a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Why am I stuttering so much? More so than usual, I should say. He has a lot of unknowables that make him really interesting, you know? He's a big guy. Intangibles. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you, chat. Hey, Johnny, how you doing? Welcome to the chat. Intangibles was the word I was looking for. I'm completely losing it, I guess. So, you know, it's like, you know, it's like, I don't know what you do with a guy like Hobbs. Like a Hobbs in 1996 would have been a superstar. Unquestionably. But in this era where everyone has become a lot more used to pro wrestlers being, you know, smaller, more wiry, you know, not as jacked, but fit. That's like, now that this has kind of become the standard of pro wrestlers, a guy like Hobbs, you know, doesn't meet like certain immediate criteria. And for me, as a guy who, you know, who also enjoys a little variety, like different stuff in his pro wrestling presentations, as far as wrestler types and the way they wrestle and whatnot, not only like just one style the whole way. A guy like Hobbs makes me wonder, like, where does he fall? Where does he fall in modern pro wrestling? Because I don't think he's that much of a shoo-in in WWE as people seem to think he is, you know? And you know, if I were Tony Khan, I'd hang on to this guy because I think he's got a bright fucking future in front of him. But I'd figure out what to do with him too. Like, I'd ask around, I'd make some calls, I'd watch some old tapes. Like, okay, how do I book this kid? Instead of just being, you know, hanging around in the ops. So that's interesting. We'll, again, keep an eye on that too. But I mean, Gabe Kidd, I'll tell you, between us all, if Gabe Kidd re-signs with New Japan, I will be the first guy to be surprised. I will be very, very surprised. And Jody Thread is not showing up on AEW TV these days. Let me tell you something. She is not going to be on All Elite Wrestling TV. Neither is this guy, Mustafa Ali. He re-signed with TNA. Let's read quickly, we'll read the quote here that he shared. Just a few days ago, I officially re-signed with TNA Wrestling. So yeah, TNA, Mustafa Ali, AMC. I'm very, very happy with that. TNA management, Carlos Silva, Tommy Dreamer, everybody top to bottom has just been very supportive. I don't want to say they see the vision. I bring them this idea. I've earned it. I've earned it, I feel like, but there's so much trust from them. Good for him. And I hope this puts to bed any thoughts that Mustafa Ali missing out is that AEW missed out on Mustafa Ali, that somehow, we dropped the ball or that Tony fumbled. This is a guy who wants to be there. He just wants to be there. And it's not as if Ali didn't have any ins for AEW. Probably one of his biggest supporters in Bryan Danielson. Probably would have liked him to show up. But he fits in perfectly. He fits in perfectly in TNA. And probably a lot more than I would have thought. Look, I want to point this out. Good for him. And if he's making decent money in the meantime, even better for him. And he's probably real happy that he's still hanging around the WWE orbit, right? That's likely something that is very satisfying for him, that maybe at some point, the clouds will part and the rays of sunshine beaming down from Triple H's beatific smile will shower him in rays of warmth and carry him back up to the main roster of WWE. Who knows? But nonetheless, I'm surprised at how much he fits in there. Because myself, like a lot of people, were excited that he decided to not renew his contract with WWE all the way back then. What is it? Has it been 4 years, 5 years? How long has it been? And we were all looking forward to seeing what an unchained, unfettered Mustafa Ali would be able to do out there without being bogged down by the WWE house style. We were all very excited about that. Remember, he would constantly post videos of him sparring, training, right? And he'd be doing these great sequences with his sparring partner. And we were like, holy shit, this will be so cool once he hits the independents, right? And he does a few New Japan shots, New Japan of America, the strong brand, and he moves around a bit, and everything he does is it was good, but unremarkable, right? He'd just be doing things. He'd be doing some, not to say that what he was doing wasn't compelling or interesting, but was just very, all right. I kind of was expecting more. It's kind of like thinking that every time this guy was going to step into the ring, he was going to tear the house down and prove all his naysayers in WWE that he has the stuff and he's a great worker. And instead, what does he do? He focuses on sports entertainment. He does this presidential candidate character, and he's got his Secret Service and whatnot, and it turns out he's tailor-made for TNA. Just gives enough effort. He's a good enough worker to be one of the best workers on TNA. And then he has all the sports entertainment stuff down perfectly. And it's like, okay, well, yeah. I mean, I don't want phony presidential candidate Ali and all of this political gimmickry that he does with his Secret Service and all this bullshit. I don't want that on AEW. I have no interest in that, in fact. A lot of people will say Tony fumbled. I will say Tony dodged a bullet, or, someone had a really good read on Mustafa Ali. Someone had a really, really good read, and good for him. So, good for him if he resigned and he's comfortable doing what he does. And he's probably real excited at the idea that AMC, he's going to be back on cable TV, it's, not access, in an actual network. He's probably station, cable network, whatever they call it now. It's not a network. It's a cable station. It's a broadcast cable. It's not broadcast. Fuck. Anyway, you all know what I meant. Yeah, he's probably really excited that the bigger exposure and whatnot. He probably sees some big things. And probably Carlos Silva, he's probably like, ooh, he's a former WWE guy, because Carlos Silva really, really likes NXT people. Hey, did you know that there's been a shakeup in WWE creative? What? Yes, there has. Has Paul Levesque finally been demoted? Has he been taken? Have his hands been removed off of the wheel? No. But here we are nonetheless. Again, an article from the Wrestling Observer Online. Dave Meltzer addressed the structure of the team in this week's edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, noting that Ryan Ward has received, quote unquote, a little push, while SmackDown co-head writers John Swikata and Brian Road Dog James have received a, quote unquote, little push down. Meltzer wrote this. This is the current breakdown of creative. Paul Levesque drives the show. Bruce Pritchard and Ed Koskey weigh in on creative, but they also handle the company-wide distribution of information. Ryan Ward is in charge of handling all the creative pitches to Levesque. Jonathan Bakestrom and Alexandra Williams are the co-lead writers for Raw. John Swikata and Brian James, Road Dog, are the co-lead writers of SmackDown. Ward has been picking up a lot of the slack on SmackDown. William Regal and Michael Hayes are also involved. Nothing has really changed in the last few months on this, except that there were issues with SmackDown creative that have been said to now be improved, but it was said to be a minimal shakeup, basically a little push up for Ward and a little push down for Swikata and James. Aw, not a push down for the Road Dog, for the roadie. Oh no. Meltzer also noted in the article that one WWE source mentioned it's a shame that Michael Hayes came off so poorly in the WWE Unreal series because when he's on his game, Hayes makes meaningful contributions. All right. Too bad he wasn't on his game when the cameras were rolling. Ain't that weird? I mean, I didn't watch the show, so I don't know what they're referencing. But I mean, you know, when you know the cameras are on, right? I don't know. The creative changes come as WWE SmackDown recently moved back to 3 hours beginning with the January 2 episode. In 2025, SmackDown ran as a 3-hour show from January to July, reverted back to 2 hours from July recently. On a recent episode of the Brian and Vinny Show, our own Brian Alvarez noted that he'd been told the show would likely following a similar format in 2026, with it reverting back to 2 hours this summer. I think it's interesting that there's been this little this slight demotion, right? Nothing serious, right? Dave is very clear to underscore. It's nothing serious. It's just a wee little push down, just a tiny demotion, you know, like, okay. But I think it's funny that it's coming off of a situation where, off of a reality where SmackDown has been underperforming in the ratings, right? Like SmackDown has not been doing well. And look, any great leader like Paul Levesque needs his scapegoats, needs his guys to take the fall. You shields up for Paul, right? Every single time. Because this man here, this is the driving force. This is our head of creative. This is the guy. This is our man here. When there's even slight shakeups like this, at least it indicates, it shows that that WWE is aware that things are not good. Things are not, or at the very least, not going great, and that they have to do something to change some things around. Because look, you can't look at the SmackDown numbers that it's been doing and go, hey, this has been great, because it really hasn't. You can't be happy with that. I'd assume that your partner, USA, from whom you took away their Monday night staple that has been there for decades, you know, I don't think they're necessarily excited that their Friday night thing is underperforming too. You know, it's like, you know, there's a bunch of stuff at play here. Paul can handle it, right? He's the most creative guy, and he's the most creative guy. He's got all the great ideas, like having people run out in all black with the black hoodie pulled over their face with the mask. Man, Never seen that before. Has never been overused. He's such a creative guy. Well, chat pointed it out, but I did want to say, it's like, how many times does Road Dogg get demoted? How many times does Road Dogg put in control of stuff and stinks the place up? And then it's like, well, got a little demotion here. Just a little less of a push. Just a slight less. Not this push this hard. The fuck? And what is this line? Less of a push. A little push and a little push down. What does that mean? Aren't we adults? Can't we use real terms? Is it a demotion? Because it kind of fucking sounds like a demotion. Not like, oh, a little push. Who are we protecting? I mean, look, I'm not saying that Dave is trying to cover up for people. That's not what I'm saying. It's like whoever his source is saying this. Just a little push down. And that's what Dave is relating. Saying, I was told, little push down, a little push for this guy, and a little push down for these two other guys. Okay, so it's a demotion and a promotion is what you're saying. And why can't we use these words? Why are we afraid of using these words? None of you are on the record anyway. Whoever Dave is talking to, none of this is on the record, or at least, no, it's on the record. Excuse me. Let me say that again. No one's putting their name on it. It's anonymous reporting. It's on the record, but it's anonymous sources. A little push. Jesus Christ. Who are these children? Who are these fucking children? A little tidbit of news as Paul Levesque continues to right the ship and, with his own challenges, with his own fan base. Have you noticed like all of these new faces, you finally do something with Carmelo Hayes, fan favorite that people have been clamoring for. And it's like, oh, things are not going well. Paul Levesque is being accused of stuff. Suddenly, Carmelo Hayes is being pushed. Interesting. Anyway, the answer to right the ship, give Drew the title. I have yet to see anyone say Drew McIntyre is a bad choice. I have yet to see anyone say that. However, the way that Drew acquired the title, the way Drew got his hands on the title, that leaves to be desired. That's something that you can be a little more, you can gnash your teeth around a little more or point and laugh. Because that was a shitty finish. That was a really shitty finish. It wasn't as bad. It wasn't like an all-time terrible finish, It wasn't like some, but it's a shitty finish. It's a shitty finish in which no one looks good in. Like no one looks good. Everyone looks like fucking idiots. Cody looks like an idiot. Drew looks like an idiot. Jacob Fatu looks like an idiot. Everyone looks like an idiot. I don't know why. But then again, this is the storytelling company, folks. They know how to tell stories. That's their bread and butter. To protect anyone from an actual pin, they make everyone look like an idiot. Exactly. Like at some point, just have people. Hey, do you think Cody Rhodes' career is going to be derailed here if he loses to Drew McIntyre? If he gets pinned 1, 2, 3, do you think he's done? Do you think he's toast? No. It's fucking Cody Rhodes. And what does this do for Drew? Drew looks like a fucking buffoon here. There's nothing exciting. There's nothing good that comes out of this. I swear to God. And the thing is that we've lost the plot because then you see people heading to social media saying, finally, Drew deserves it. And it's like, what? Look at how he won the title. There's nothing good about it. Yes, I am one of the proponents, even though I don't even watch the show. I'm one of the proponents of Drew McIntyre getting a world championship run in front of an actual audience. 100% behind that. But the way he got it absolutely stinks. And that means that this is how his run is going to go. Because he's just going to win by shitty means. He's just going to be like, the typical shit heel WWE champion. That's what he's going to be. And it's a typical thing. It's a classic. They stick to it like glue. There's not going to be there aren't going to be any great matches. There aren't going to be any definitive wins until he drops it back to Cody, I would say at Elimination Chamber, so that Cody can have the title going into WrestleMania. Or look, this is to add drama leading into WrestleMania. This is what this is for. And I have trouble believing that Drew McIntyre is going to be on a night 2 main event of WrestleMania. Night 1 for the phony world title, yes, that I'd believe. But for the real world title, for the one that WWE actually values, the undisputed title, which again, we need to underscore this every time we mention it, is absolutely disputed because there is another world championship in the promotion, which automatically makes the other world championship disputed. So you just want to put that out there. Because we know it's the undisputed title that has the true value in the eyes of WWE. I hope everyone recognizes that. Everyone knows that, right? It's Roman's title. It's the title that Roman had, that Cody ran after for months upon months. This is the one. This is the one that Dusty wanted to win, that we're led to believe that this is the one that Dusty wanted to win, right? So, I like Drew and all, but is he that level of superstar? Night 2 main event? That's not happening. And the undisputed title is the Night 2 main event championship belt. Again, another article from the Figure 4 Online Observer. Tony Khan commented on AEW's possible involvement in the G1 Climax this summer. The tournament will kick off in Chicago at the Now Arena on July 11. We're going to talk about that, I guess, a bit. During an appearance on the Battleground podcast, Khan said he expects AEW wrestlers to be included in the tournament and discussed his working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Khan was asked if he had creative input when AEW wrestlers are booked for New Japan tournaments. He responded, quote, "No. New Japan may come to me to book wrestlers in the tournament, but how they handle their business, that's completely New Japan's prerogative. But we may work together. I think there could potentially be involvement from AEW wrestlers. I believe there will be based on our early talks. So I'm excited about that and the G1 coming to America, coming this summer to America." Khan was also asked about New Japan Pro Wrestling referring to Andrade as an AEW wrestler at Wrestle Kingdom 20 and New Year's Dash, and whether there was an update on his status. Well, I'd say that bodes well, wouldn't you? I think it bodes very well. Well, we all know what happened there. And then he addressed once again this fucking idea about wrestlers having creative control. This is something that exists in the minds of only the dopiest people on Twitter, by the way. And Khan answered what Warren Hayes has been saying every fucking time this topic comes up, whether it's Mercedes Moné or MJF, it's the same thing. There is no creative control. Only I have it. No wrestler has that. There's a lot of freedom to work with the staff and the coaches and the wrestlers together and come up with ideas. I am one of the most collaborative people on the planet. So, okay, first of all, I'm getting carried away. First of all, let's talk about the reason why we pulled this article up, which is AEW wrestlers involved in the G1. I think it is something. I think it is something interesting because right now, what AEW has to be careful of in regards to its positioning in Japan with its partner is not to overload the presence of All Elite Wrestling wrestlers in New Japan, because there is a legitimate gripe from New Japan fans that feel like AEW is a little too present and maybe not the best partner. And whether you agree with that or not is against the point at this stage, because that's the perception that exists right now. That's the perception. Which is why a guy like Yota Tsuji, on the lead up to Wrestle Kingdom, was saying that AEW is not a good partner, and was very critical of the relationship between New Japan and AEW because he knew what he was doing. He knew what he had to do to speak to the audience that he needed, that he wanted to get behind him. Because if you get the smart fans behind you, there's a very good chance that, you know, you'll be untouchable and you'll be safe, right? So I think he was, and I still think he's very much working, right? And going along with, you know, the decision that he made to say, well, the IWGP heavyweight title is only going to be defended by New Japan signed wrestlers, contracted wrestlers, and the global title is going to be for, you know, international shots and invaders, right? As he called it. I believe it was the term invaders that he used. But like, I know a lot of people get bothered with that. It doesn't bother me because the guy is working. And what it ultimately indicates is that there is, because of these responses, because of these discussions going around in Japan, there is a large amount of fans who are put off by AEW. All right. Now, I think the most preposterous thing to get upset about is the fact that AEW decimated the roster and took everyone away. And I think that's proper bullshit. And it is up to the company to do it. It's up to the company to decide what to do with their wrestlers, with the creatively money and so on and so forth. That's not on AEW's. That's not AEW's issue, right? AEW, all they had to do was AEW played fair and was just like, look, Kazuchika Okada, we are ready to offer you these sacks of money for you to come over and wrestle. And here's something that a lot of people don't want to hear. But if AEW hadn't been around, you know, Kazuchika Okada would very likely be wrestling in WWE today. And that's just the reality of it. He same situation, no AEW. Well, Kazuchika Okada is a World Wrestling Entertainment professional wrestler. That's all there is to it. New Japan didn't have the money or didn't have the whatever to be able to hang on to Okada or Ospreay or Jay White and so on and so forth. And, you know, but also at the same time, these guys felt that they had hit their ceilings, right? Not a ceiling, hit the maximum they could do creatively within the company. And they were like, well, let's go do something somewhere else. And I can't tell you guys enough how fucking healthy it is for wrestlers to do that. And it should happen more. Now, the inherent problem in that is not AEW calling people away or whisking them away. It's New Japan not being ready to answer the call when these people started disappearing. And you could say, well, they got blindsided, but they got blindsided by two guys. They legitimately got blindsided with Okada and Ospreay, which were arguably the two of the biggest stars in the company. Okada was the biggest star in the company. But they should have been preparing regardless for the departure of Hiroshi Tanahashi and the departure of Tetsuya Naito. And even if you didn't know that Naito was leaving, Naito, you know, is so broken down now. You had to have other people ready to go. You should have been able to get some people lined up to come and take these spots. So if New Japan had done its job properly and instead of living in the past was trying to look towards the future and start pushing new guys, well, the losses of Okada and Ospreay would not have hit as hard. I'm not saying that they wouldn't have hit hard, but not as hard, because then you'd be like, you know what? We're fine because look at these 2 or 3 guys. Look at these fellas coming up. We're fine. Yeah, and I think New Japan has finally figured it out. I think they finally understand that situation. We'll see how it plays out over the next couple of months, but I've been hearing some very encouraging things regarding booking and creative plans backstage. And anyway, don't want to go too deep, but I've been hearing some very encouraging things. So you know, it's like, so all of this to say, that AEW should be prudent about, how far they go and who they send and whatnot, right? I think it makes sense with the G1 kicking off in the United States on July 11. I think it makes sense for them to, them meaning them meaning the AEW. I think it makes sense that they would have some kind of presence in the G1. But then don't forget that person then leaves for the rest of the month, right into mid-August. So, well, for the rest of the month. Yeah, for 1 month, essentially. That's what I'm trying to say. So, should they have, and especially this year, when New Japan's back is legitimately against the wall, right? When they absolutely have to be looking inward to promote new guys, right? We've got a full 7 months before we actually reach the G1 and have to see what they're going to be laying out. But we have a full 7 months leading up. Are we going to be in a position where, when I say we, is New Japan going to be in a position where they're like, yes, let's invite people from other promotions to join, the G1, or will they be more in a spot where they'd be like, yeah, no, we really have to focus on our guys. We have to finish this G1 with 3 or 4 dudes that everyone points to and says, okay, here are the superstars, right? Because let's say they do send Claudio, which I think would be a solid choice. Claudio will come back. Claudio will be taking someone's spot, is what I was trying to say. He'll be taking a pushed commodity spot because Claudio is not going to be joining the G1 to be a pin eater. He's not going to be jumping in to take, Yujiro Takahashi's spot. He's going to be in there to, at the very least, get an even Steven record. I would say probably even qualify for the playoffs, whatever form they take this year. So my point being is that Claudio takes a spot. Whose spot does he take? Shota Umino? Yeah, sure. No one gives a fuck about Shota Umino at this point. But would people care if it was, probably people would care more if it was a guy like Ryohei Oiwa, if it was a guy like Yuto Ice. My new favorite thing is, the hiss at the end of Yuto Ice. That's the funniest thing. But this is just something you have to keep in mind. That if Claudio is a guy who comes in and is pushed throughout the G1, then he's taking someone's spot, right? He's taking someone's spot. Just like if they invite someone from CMLL, they'll be taking someone's spot. And I am all for these tournaments having an international flair. It makes them more credible, makes them fun. There's something unexpected. You always end up with new matches, new first-time matches, right? So it's like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of positives. What I'm saying to you, audience, is temper your expectations but we'll revisit this as we move along. Temper your expectations because New Japan, if they're smart, New Japan has to focus on themselves first before bringing other people in and making them look good in their super prestigious wrestling tournament. They have to make their own stars, and they have no more choice. They have no choice other than to create mega stars this year. This is what New Japan has to do. They had their back against the wall last year. Now the wall is gone and they're in a free fall because they're not doing 50,000 or 46,900 and something. What was the number? Something to that effect. They're not doing that in the Dome next year. I hope everyone realizes that. They're not doing that again next year. And they got to do everything in their power to, at the very least, hit the numbers that they were doing previously. Like for Wrestle Kingdom 19, for instance, and 18. At the very least, we have to get back. We have to at least hit those numbers, right? If we start going lower than that, then the promotion is in a worse spot than they believed. So it's a delicate line to juggle. I think one person from AEW is absolutely fine, but if people are like expecting, I'd love Claudio and I don't know, name someone else. I saw Powerhouse Hobbs getting thrown around yesterday, and Powerhouse Hobbs. Well, 2 guys I think is too much, and does nothing for New Japan in this circumstance here. Now, let's say in 5 years from now, when the gravy train is rolling and we've got the top guys in the soup, and everything is perfect. Now you're like, okay, let's open up the gates. Let's get more people in here. Now that the money's flowing, everyone's back. Let's just keep this ball rolling, kind of thing, right? Because otherwise, don't forget, like there's 10 spots per block, I think. 10 spots. It looks like a lot, but it really isn't. Anyway, the fact that Tony, this early in the year, in January, is saying, yeah, I think you can expect an AEW presence in the G1, means there's going to be someone from AEW in the G1. He wouldn't be saying that if he didn't feel like that was something that was going to happen. So that is something that's going to happen. Now, what Tony has to do next year is put someone from this year, I should say, is put someone from New Japan in the C2. And again, not Tomohiro Ishii, who is part of the AEW fabric now, or Katsuyori Shibata. No, then you bring in a guy, then you bring in a Yuto Ice, you bring in a Yuya Umera, then you bring in, a Ryohei Oiwa. You bring in someone who is absolutely in the fabric of New Japan. Gabe Kidd's not going to count. Besides, Gabe Kidd might. Anyway, Gabe Kidd's not going to count because he's a regular in AEW now. So it's like you bring in those dudes and you bring in those guys. You bring in one guy who is part of the fabric of New Japan, and then you add a little more gusto to the C2, which is important. It's silly, but I think like adding a guy like Mascara Dorada, who again is heavily rumored to have a dual contract, but nonetheless added a little more excitement to it. Like, his matches were all first time matches, pretty much, right? Trying to think back, I think there was only one that was that wasn't, but anyway. So, that's all I'm saying. I think that I reasonable minds will understand that New Japan is in a spot this year where they really have to focus on building their stars, and their objective is not to cater to AEW wrestlers. Their job is to cater to their fans and the future of New Japan. And so they have to be building, they have to start building new guys. This tournament is going to be very, very important for that. And hopefully they don't fuck it up. But, we'll talk about this again, like in July. But it's still an interesting thought to have early on in the year. Anakin JMT, member of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show for 67 months. Holy smokes. Thank you for your undivided membership, Anakin. I appreciate it. Inviting everyone to join the Fantasy Critic League or be a square, which is what we are starting to run on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show Discord. I believe tomorrow is when we're starting. And Anakin is handling all of this. But we're doing a Fantasy Critic League for video games on the Discord. And it's going to be cool. It's the first time I'm going to be doing it. I think I understand how it works, but you should join and figure out how it works with me. And that'll be tremendous. The link is in the description. We'd love to have you, but I think this is a really good time to join. And there's going to be a prize for the winner at the end of the year, a $15 gift card for the gaming service of your choice, whether it be Steam or the Xbox or the PlayStation or the Switch or the Game Gear or the Neo Geo or the Genesis, etc., etc. Because we're bringing up the creative control again, once more, I must say, I got to tell you, I must use this tired phrase. People should listen to Warren more. Because that's all I say over and over and over and fucking again. That's all I say. Whenever this topic comes up, that MJF does whatever he wants, that he has creative control, that Mercedes Moné has creative control, this is it. Again, Tony has said this before, and we're reiterating again. This is what he's saying. There's no creative control, only I have it. No wrestler has it. There's a lot of freedom to work with the staff and the coaches and the wrestlers together having come up with ideas. I'm one of the most collaborative people on the planet. I'm pretty collaborative, quite frankly. I don't know. I challenge Tony Khan on that front, quite honestly. That being said, there is no creative control. There's one guy through all that filters all these ideas and puts a stamp on it. Whatever you see on television goes through Tony Khan. No one else bypasses it. No one says, this is what we're going to be doing. He stamps everything. Now, where things get a little dicier, where things that, now that we're in moment, here's how the reality of these things work. Because everyone would love for things to be really binary and say, this guy has creative control, this lady has creative control. And just be able to put everything in little pockets. But real life doesn't exactly work that way. Tony listens to his staff. He listens to wrestlers. And guess what? He has favorites. He has people he really likes. He's got people he wants to push. So he listens to these people's ideas. And a lot of times he likes these ideas. And he goes, okay, we're going to do this. Such as Max. MJF, for instance, doesn't have creative control. And anyone who's still saying that is just, a bad faither. But MJF does not have creative control in AEW. But he does have the ear of the boss, and the boss just happens to really like Max and really like Max's ideas. So what does he do? So what does Max do? He goes to the boss. He says, hey, we should do this. The boss says, it's a great idea. Let's do it. And then we do it. And then people get upset because Max has free reign. Max doesn't have free reign. It's easy. Look, I am not defending every single idea that MJF has ever come up with. That would be an exercise in futility. But it's also extremely bad faith to say, Max goes unchecked. That's a little wrong, a lot wrong. It's the same thing with Mercedes. Somehow, Mercedes going on the belt collector gimmick was based on the fact that she didn't want a job to anyone. And that somehow this was in her contract. She had creative control over this. It's Tony who okayed this idea. And he says, you know what? Let's be bold. Let's try this. And when he says there's a lot of freedom to work with the staff and the coaches, that means these people usually, that means, go work out the details. But what I want on this show is I want this, and that. He said it himself just, last week. I come up with the outlines for the shows. And then I pass the outlines on to the staff and they fill out the details. And then they figure it out. But it's not Tony sitting down like Vince used to do and work through every fucking little line of dialogue until we had to tear up the entire script 2 hours before the start of the show. That's not how it works. And if there are wrestlers that you see often on television that seem to have, run of the place, they don't have run of the place. They are just following what the boss wants. And quite frankly, here's the thing, is that any wrestler who would be able to exert this much influence on the booker, as you know, a lot of these guys apparently can, they'd all do the same. More TV time for me, bigger, bolder ideas, and they'd all do that. They all do that. They all fucking do that. And every wrestler that has the opportunity to do it will take it. That's just it. Like that's how Tony works. When you piece it all together, it becomes so much clearer. It becomes so much clearer. And I don't understand how anyone then turns around and starts talking about wrestlers having creative control. It makes no sense. Tony has taken the time towards the end of 2025 to explain how the creative process works. Once again, like he's here talking about creative control. I don't even know why these guys brought it up again. Why we keep talking about creative control. You know, I don't know why this is constantly a subject. We understand how it works. Just like we understood how it worked with Vince, we understand how it works with Tony. That's all. The Mercedes thing is funny because she said it on an IG live or something and people believed her so hard they can't admit they got worked. I mean, yes. Yes. And I mean, they all got worked regardless because they all thought that she was, that she was Mercedes Hogan or whatever, right? So they're all getting worked. So whatever Mercedes was doing was working. Whatever Mercedes did throughout her international global reign with all the titles, it all worked. And one thing that I found interesting and that I forgot to talk about on the Dynamite review today, and I'm the worst, is that it's very, very interesting to me that Mercedes ends up losing the TBS title. And she didn't come out with any other of her belts. She doesn't find any solace in any of the other belts that she's collected. She's just very, very upset, heartbroken, distraught that she lost the TBS title. And that is smart. That is smart booking because it indicates to the viewer that the AEW championships matter the most in AEW. Of course. Because this is what I was apprehensive on, and I'm glad they didn't go this way, but I was afraid that they were going to do something where Mercedes comes out and she still has all the gold and she goes, it doesn't matter, doing a 100% WWE trope, one that I could not stand anymore, back when I was still watching, right? Follow me on this. Whenever someone would lose their title in WWE, the next time they show up on Raw, they're not upset. They're not, flipping tables or whatnot. They're smug. That's the default attitude. They're just smug. They come out and they say stuff like, it doesn't matter if I lost because I will regain it one day, and so on and so forth. It's like, it should matter that you lost. You should be upset. You should be upset that you lost because it's the world title or whatnot. You should be mad. And I will always remember that when Drew McIntyre was champion and he lost the title to Bobby Lashley. And if I remember correctly, he lost the title to Bobby Lashley because Mike the Miz got involved, something to that effect. There was some outside interference that cost him the title. And I was thinking Drew should show up on Raw, flipping tables, destroying catering, shouting at everyone, just being pissed off, legitimately pissed off. But instead, no, he comes to the ring and he's, hey, no big deal. It's like, he's not angry at anyone. Why doesn't anyone get angry? Why doesn't anyone get angry because you're losing your top title? So that's what I was afraid they were going to do here. That's what I was legitimately afraid that they were going to do here. Mercedes come out and say, It doesn't matter. I've still got 9 titles, or whatever the fuck. But she didn't. She came out and she was legitimately upset. So that, for the AEW viewer, is super positive because it indicates that the AEW titles are the one that matter the most. And that's what it should be in the promotion. That is what it should be. You can argue with me that, that sucks for CMLL. She has the women's world title and, she should hold it in higher regard then. Yeah, but no, not in AEW canon. Your world women, well, not your world, but like your titles, regardless, should always be more important than anywhere else. So that was a very slick, very smart thing to do. And the more things are going, the more I see how things are going, I should say, the more I think that Mercedes Moné, the fucking sicko that she is going to be jumping on a plane and flying all across the world to go drop the titles that she won from Italy and fucking Portugal and Belgium and, Denmark and wherever the fuck else. And she's going to get a title. She's going to get a title defense in Arena Mexico sooner than later too. And whoever she's going to be paired up against is going to be winning that title. Like at first, when all of this was going on, I was like, oh, she's just going to relinquish some belts. But no, I keep telling you guys, she's one of us. She's a sicko. She loves pro wrestling. She fucking loves pro wrestling. And I legitimately believe she's going to do it now. I think she's going to go around and she's going to start dropping titles right and left, and it's going to be glorious. Now, Netflix had nice things to say about WWE on its service. Again, another article read off of the Wrestling Observer Figure 4 Online. In a press release issued today being January 12, 2026, Netflix celebrated the viewership WWE brought in during its first year on the platform. January 6 marked the 1-year anniversary of Raw coming to Netflix. The jokes write themselves, folks. Over the first year of the partnership, Netflix claims its subscribers watched 525 million hours of WWE content. Most of that was for Raw, while the remaining portion was taken up by content that is available internationally, but not on Netflix in the United States. Netflix members, this is a quote here from the press release, Netflix members welcomed WWE with a bang, but thankfully no permanent injuries. That's awful. I don't know if there's anyone out there who is looking to work in PR. Okay, here's a little tip of advice for someone who's been in the game for a little bit. Don't do jokes in your press release. Don't do jokes in your press release. It's corny. It's dumb, and serious journalists hate it. Like, this guy here printed it out, copy pasted it directly, but anyone else would have put like ellipses or whatever the fuck. Don't do jokes in your press release. It's corny. In 2025, our members watched 525 million hours of WWE content. Of this total, Raw accounted for nearly 340 million views and 185 million views for premium live events broadcast outside of the US like SmackDown, WrestleMania, Elimination Chamber, Money in the Bank, Night of Champions, and Royal Rumble. Netflix touted that Raw ranked in the top 10 of its category most weeks, with it only falling out outside of the rankings in December when Stranger Things took up much of the top 10. Here's another quote from the press release. Since Raw's official Netflix debut on January 6, 2025, the show has made the global English TV top 10 nearly every week it's been on service, 47 out of a possible 52 weeks. Over 52 shows, Raw has averaged more than 3 million views per week. That can't be right. That can't be right. There's going to be people who are going to work the math on this, and that cannot be right because most weeks it was under 3 million. That can't be right. And it's not just in the US, the birthplace of the WWE. Raw has made the top 10 in 34 countries, including the US. I mean, it's not just in the US. It's not just in the US that WWE has has had great numbers. You know, Raw has made the top 10 in 34 countries, including the US. But it's not just in the US, but including the US for 51 weeks, Bolivia for 49, Canada for 48, the UK for 40, and Mexico for 38. The start of 2026 saw the WWE PLE library added to Netflix. Along with that, season 2 of the docuseries WWE Unreal will arrive on the service on January 20. All right. So first and foremost, this is something that we have been saying for a bit. We talk about it often. If the streaming services and WWE are not touting the numbers, then there's, maybe it's under delivering. Maybe it's not as great as everyone says it is, And I would assume, this is just me thinking out loud here. I would assume that with the bad press that WWE has been getting recently, and the overall dissatisfaction of its fans that you're feeling more and more. I don't want to say overall. That's a bad choice of words. But the growing dissatisfaction that WWE fans have been expressing recently, particularly, after a certain man retired from professional wrestling a few Saturday nights ago, I think that some people in WWE called their contacts at Netflix and were like, listen, hey, could you cobble something together? Let's tout some numbers for the year. Let's make a nice little press release and make it sound great. And they were like, yeah, probably, sure, who cares, kind of thing. Because, the Jake Paul fight, right, against the guy who completely destroyed his jaw. I can't remember his name. It's a shame because I should remember his name because he's the man who destroyed Jake Paul's mouth. He should be in the excuse me. Netflix decided, I think the very next day or 2 days later, to put out a press release touting the numbers, touting the viewership. They never did that for Raw. They never did that for any PLE that airs internationally. They never done it because it's not impressive, right? It has to be. And what's interesting too is that the press release doesn't have any signatures. It's not signed off by any executives. It's just like throwing out numbers, but there's no executives that are putting out, I understand most of the time they're just platitudes, right? Where the executive says, we are excited at the announce of these numbers. We are looking forward to strengthening our partnership over the next few months with a dedicated, integrated visual, whatever the fuck. They start using some buzzwords, and they're platitudes, right? They're platitudes. It's not even the executive who's writing out the shit. It's like it's one of the interns who's writing up the stuff, probably off of ChatGPT now. Trust me, I know. Not that I use ChatGPT, but whenever I put out press releases, I never hunt down the president for a quote for my press release. I'll make something up, and then when I send it to him, and he goes, "Good job." And there you go. That's all there is to it. I'm not gonna sit him down and say, "Could you come up with a quote for a 25-word quote, sir? Could you make time out of your day, your busy schedule, sir, for this?" So that's one thing. So I guess WWE, look, it may be a little conspiracy brained, but I feel like this was, they might have pushed this one a little bit. They might have just gone for it a little bit, where it's like, hey, let's try and get some numbers out there, right, Netflix, to start the year off the right foot. And Netflix, I guess, was happy to oblige. Now, the numbers sound excellent, right? 525 million hours of WWE content overall, right? Across the globe. That sounds huge when you see it that way, but I don't know. I'm not impressed. Let's pull up the old Tudum site, okay? Tudum. Let's pull it up here. Let's just go see in the top 10s here, and we'll do shows English, and we'll do the global, okay? This is what Stranger Things has done, okay? In a week, 325 million views in a week is what Stranger Things did. A 1 week of programming. Now I understand this is the juggernaut, okay? I understand this. It's the biggest fucking series on Netflix. One of the biggest series, on accessible via your television apparatus. Okay? I understand all of that. And Netflix is out there saying, hey, 525 million hours of WWE content have been watched around the world. And I compare that to Stranger Things, and I'm like, I'm not that impressed. I'm not that impressed. Okay, let's look at the you start to look at the bottom here. Like last week, it's a Dave Chappelle special that rounded it out at 3,500,000 hours. Okay. And even Stranger Things, look, even the older seasons of Stranger Things have all been gathering 43 million, 37 million, 62 million. I think it's okay to not be all that impressed. They may sound like big numbers. 525 million is a big number. Don't get me wrong. It's not blowing my socks off. I'm not sitting here going, wow, what a global phenomenon. Especially when you consider this, that Raw accounted for nearly 340 million views. So Raw includes the US, right? But everything else does not. All of this here. So again, like the majority, the 340 million views that they get is all pretty much in the US regardless. This is when they start talking about WWE being a global brand and whatnot. I'm not seeing it. 185 million views for the year for all the content that is not, that is international, right? That is not available in the United States. They get 185 million. I'm sorry, it's not that impressive. I understand why. Now I understand why they did this, the optics and whatnot. And you look at the size of the numbers and you say to yourself, wow, these are really great numbers. What big ass numbers. It's really not all that impressive. It's really not all that impressive. I don't know. Is it just me? I mean, look, we compared with stuff that is actually on Netflix. We're trying to see. I mean, look at this amount. This is in a week. This is in a week. You know what I mean? Just a week. What about, look, and let's take a look, just the United States again for comparison's sake. Oh, we don't get the views here. We only get the views for the global stuff. So, So I mean, look, I think it's great and all that Netflix and that Netflix and WWE finally came together, right? To put out a press release to tout the numbers. I think that's good. I think good partnerships should do that. I think at the very least, it shows that WWE and Netflix are tight together. Because, they talk to each other, obviously. And they're like, hey, maybe we could do one of these. Maybe we could put something out like that. And there you go. But I mean, the numbers, when you look at them, they may look super impressive, when you just look at the numbers cold, received just like that off the top of the dome. You're like, wow, okay, these are big numbers. But then, like always, you dig a little bit, you take a look at how things are going on, and you're like, nope, we're going to hit the bricks on this one. These numbers aren't great. There's nothing that knocks my socks off. There's just nothing that knocks my socks off. That's all. No, I don't think they're I don't think the numbers are being inflated. I think they're overall okay. I think the average is a little high, but probably some people will break down the math. I know people who have the math, who follow the numbers much more closely to me and are better than Matt in math than I am. But I feel like the average that they said, what was the average? They said 3.3 million a week is what was the average. Average more than 3 million views per week on average. I think that's a little high. I think it's a little high. But again, like there will be people who will hit the circuit. They'll come up with the data and so on and so forth. Yeah, this is all globally. And that about does it for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you all very much for being here. If again, you have one last plea for a like on the video or a 5-star review or a 5-star rating. I will be back very soon, as soon as tomorrow, where I'm going to have the AEW Dynamite review like I typically do on Thursdays. And then Thursday evening on the stream, we are going to be doing a watch party, a TNA watch party for their debut show on American Movie Classics, AMC, on Thursday night. So we'll be doing that. So hop in on the stream over on YouTube if you'd like to just hang out with the community and see my instant reactions and crossing my fingers that it's good. Like I really do hope that it's a good show. So touch wood, cross fingers, and so on. Come and join me on Thursday evening on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes. Other than that, I will bid you adieu and thank you once again for listening, and I will see you next time.